There are times when the mind feels overcrowded and the heart feels restless, even when life appears normal on the outside. You carry responsibilities, expectations, and unanswered worries, and slowly mental stress begins to shape how you think, feel, and react. In those moments, many people assume they are failing spiritually. They wonder why prayer feels heavy, why patience feels distant, and why peace seems so difficult to reach. Islam never ignores this struggle. It does not dismiss mental stress as imagination, nor does it reduce it to a lack of belief. Islam understands the human heart because its guidance comes from the one who created it. The Qur'an and Sunnah address fear, worry, grief, and emotional pressure as real experiences, not weaknesses to be hidden. Before Islam asks a person to change their actions, it guides their inner state, because a heart under pressure cannot move forward without clarity. Allah does not demand emotional perfection. He offers direction. Islam teaches the heart how to remain anchored when thoughts become overwhelming. Through remembrance, perspective, and trust, it slowly organizes the chaos within. It does not promise a life without stress, but it promises guidance within it. That guidance teaches the believer how to respond instead of react, how to rely instead of collapse, and how to remain connected even when the mind feels exhausted. Mental stress often convinces a person that they are alone in their struggle. Islam corrects that belief. It reminds the heart that Allah is aware of every burden, every silent worry, and every thought that causes restlessness. When this understanding settles in the heart, stress no longer defines the person. It becomes a condition they are guided through, not a place they are trapped in. Islam's guidance does not rush healing, nor does it ignore effort. It provides a steady path for the heart to regain balance, strength, and direction. Even while the storm has not yet passed, mental stress is not a modern weakness, nor a sign of spiritual failure. It is a real human experience that Islam openly acknowledges. Human beings were created with emotional depth, responsibility, memory, and expectation. And when these elements collide under pressure, stress naturally emerges. Islam does not deny this reality. In fact, the Quran repeatedly addresses believers who feel fear, worry, sadness, and heaviness in the heart. This alone establishes a critical truth. Experiencing mental stress does not place a person outside the framework of faith. One of the dangers many people face is the belief that a strong believer should always feel calm, confident, and emotionally stable. This misconception creates guilt on top of stress. Islam never promotes this unrealistic standard. Instead, it recognizes that the heart fluctuates. Even those closest to Allah experience moments of anxiety, grief, and emotional strain. Their humanity was never erased by their faith, and their faith was never invalidated by their emotions. Islam approaches mental stress with dignity. It does not label it as a moral flaw or a punishment. Rather, it frames it as part of life's tests, influenced by circumstances, responsibilities, loss, and internal struggle. This understanding is important because when stress is acknowledged instead of denied, healing becomes possible. Denial isolates a person, while acknowledgement allows them to seek support, guidance, and relief without shame. From a psychological perspective, stress affects focus, sleep, emotional regulation, and motivation. Islam does not ignore these effects. Its guidance accounts for human limitation, offering mercy, flexibility, and balance. The presence of concessions, encouragement of rest, and emphasis on intention all reflect an understanding of mental load. Islam does not demand productivity from an exhausted soul. It prioritizes sincerity and effort within one's capacity. When mental stress is recognized as a natural human experience, the relationship with Allah becomes more honest. A person no longer feels the need to hide their struggles or perform strength they do not feel. They can turn to Allah with authenticity, expressing worry, confusion, and fatigue. This honesty deepens reliance and trust, transforming stress from a source of shame into a doorway for connection, reflection, and gradual inner stability. Guided by faith, Islam places the heart at the center of guidance because behavior is shaped by what settles within it. Before correcting actions or enforcing outward discipline, Islam addresses the inner state that drives those actions. This approach reflects a deep understanding of human psychology, as a heart burdened by stress, fear, or confusion cannot respond effectively to commands alone. The Quran repeatedly speaks to the heart, inviting reflection, reassurance, and awareness before responsibility. By doing so, Islam ensures that guidance is not experienced as pressure, but as support. Mental stress often disrupts clarity. Thoughts become scattered, emotions intensify, and decision-making weakens. In such a state, telling a person simply to do more or try harder increases internal resistance. Islam does not follow this path. Instead, it begins by restoring perspective. Through reminders of Allah's knowledge, mercy, and nearness, the heart is grounded before it is directed. This grounding allows guidance to be absorbed rather than rejected. The Quran consistently establishes meaning before instruction. It reminds the believer who Allah is, how life operates, and where ultimate outcomes lie. This context calms the heart by replacing uncertainty with understanding. When the heart feels secure, behavior follows naturally. Acts of worship, patience, and self-control become responses of trust rather than obligations imposed under pressure. From a psychological standpoint, sustainable change occurs when a person feels emotionally safe. Islam aligns with this principle by addressing fear and despair before expectation. It validates the emotional experience without allowing it to dominate the person's identity. This balance prevents emotional suppression while maintaining direction. The heart is neither ignored nor allowed to lead without guidance. By prioritizing the heart, Islam ensures that correction is compassionate and effective. A guidance becomes a process rather than a demand. A stressed heart is taught how to breathe, reflect, and regain balance before being asked to move forward. This order preserves dignity and prevents burnout. When the heart is guided first, actions carry sincerity, consistency, and purpose, and the believer progresses with stability rather than force, anchored in understanding rather than overwhelmed by expectation. Islam offers balance by acknowledging emotional pain without encouraging emotional denial or excess. It does not ask a person to suppress their feelings, nor does it allow those feelings to define their entire reality. Mental stress often becomes heavier when people feel pressured to ignore it or ashamed to admit it. Islam removes this pressure by validating emotional experiences while guiding how they are managed. This balance protects the heart from two extremes: pretending everything is fine or becoming consumed by distress. Emotional denial creates inner conflict. When pain is ignored, it does not disappear, it accumulates. Islam recognizes this and allows space for grief, fear, and sadness without labeling them as spiritual failure. At the same time, it does not encourage drowning in emotion or losing direction. Through remembrance, prayer, and reflection, Islam provides channels through which emotions can be processed safely and meaningfully. These practices regulate emotional intensity rather than erase it. From a psychological perspective, emotional regulation is healthier than suppression. Islam mirrors this principle by teaching moderation in all states. The heart is encouraged to express vulnerability to Allah, to acknowledge weakness, and to seek help while remaining anchored in hope and responsibility. This approach preserves emotional honesty without allowing despair to dominate. The believer is guided to face stress with awareness and composure rather than avoidance or collapse. Islam also balances inner experience with outward effort. While emotions are acknowledged, they do not excuse harmful behavior or abandonment of responsibility. Instead, guidance provides structure during emotional difficulty. Small, manageable actions are emphasized over perfection, allowing the believer to move forward without overwhelming the heart. This prevents emotional stagnation while respecting limitation. True balance in Islam is not emotional numbness, it is emotional stability. Stability comes from knowing that feelings are temporary and meaningful, but not absolute. Islam teaches that the heart can feel pain while remaining guided, tired while remaining connected, and stressed while remaining purposeful. This balanced framework transforms mental stress into a state that can be navigated with patience and clarity, ensuring that emotions are neither denied nor allowed to dictate the believer's direction, preserving dignity, resilience, and trust in Allah's wisdom. Islamic guidance is designed to bring order to the inner world before attempting to change external circumstances. Mental stress often creates chaos within the mind where thoughts race, fears multiply, and clarity disappears. Islam does not promise the immediate removal of life's problems, but it offers something more essential: inner direction. This guidance helps the heart understand how to interpret stress, respond to pressure, and regain stability even when challenges remain unresolved. When stress dominates, people often focus on fixing everything around them, believing peace will follow once problems disappear. Islam corrects this assumption by teaching that true calm begins internally. Through remembrance, reflection, and trust in Allah's wisdom, the heart learns how to remain grounded. This internal grounding reduces emotional reactivity. Instead of being controlled by anxiety or fear, the believer develops the ability to pause, assess, and respond with awareness. Islam also reshapes how stress is understood. Rather than viewing it as meaningless suffering, guidance places it within a framework of purpose and growth. This perspective alone reduces mental pressure because uncertainty is one of the greatest contributors to stress. When the heart understands that hardship has context and value, it no longer spirals into helplessness. The problem may still exist, but the inner response changes, and that change alters the emotional impact of the situation. From a psychological viewpoint, cognitive clarity is essential for emotional regulation. Islam provides this clarity by repeatedly reminding the believer of what is within their control and what is not. Responsibility is balanced with reliance. Effort is encouraged without obsession over outcomes. This balance prevents burnout and emotional exhaustion, allowing the heart to function without constant internal conflict. By guiding the heart rather than merely addressing outward problems, Islam creates resilience. The believer becomes less dependent on external stability for inner peace. Stress loses its power to define identity or direction. The heart learns to navigate difficulty with composure, patience, and trust, knowing that guidance is present even when solutions are delayed, and that inner order can exist alongside unresolved challenges through steady connection with Allah's wisdom. Faith in Islam is not presented as an escape from mental stress, but as a source of direction within it. Many people approach religion hoping it will instantly remove anxiety, pressure, or emotional pain. When that does not happen, they assume something is wrong with their faith. Islam corrects this misunderstanding by teaching that guidance does not mean the absence of hardship. Instead, it provides a framework that helps the heart navigate stress without losing meaning, stability, or connection. Mental stress often creates confusion. A person may not know how to think, what to prioritize, or where to turn emotionally. Faith offers orientation in this confusion. It gives the heart reference points, trust in Allah, awareness of purpose, and clarity about responsibility. These anchors do not erase stress, but they prevent it from overwhelming the believer. Stress becomes a condition to be managed, not a force that dictates identity or direction. Islam encourages active engagement with difficulty rather than avoidance. Through prayer, remembrance, and reflection, the believer remains connected while facing pressure. This connection creates emotional containment. The heart feels supported even while struggling, which reduces the sense of helplessness that often accompanies mental stress. Faith becomes a stabilizing presence rather than a promise of instant relief. From a psychological perspective, resilience is built through meaning and perceived support. Islam provides both. It frames hardship within a larger narrative of growth, accountability, and reward, and it assures the believer that Allah is aware of every burden. This combination strengthens endurance. A person may still feel tired, anxious, or uncertain, but they no longer feel lost. Faith also teaches patience without passivity. It encourages effort, seeking help, and taking practical steps while trusting outcomes to Allah. This balanced approach protects the heart from despair and from unrealistic expectations. Guidance remains present even when answers are delayed. The believer learns to move forward despite emotional weight, supported by trust rather than driven by fear. In this way, faith not function as an escape from mental stress, but as a compass that keeps the heart oriented, steady, and purposeful through it.